Okay, let's talk about ceilings. And no, I don't mean the one above your head right now. I'm talking about the hidden architecture that dictates exactly how far we can go. From the quiet confines of a single human mind to the sprawling floor of a multi-billion-dollar factory, all the way up to the economic statecraft of entire nations. There is an invisible limit, and we're gonna break it down in this explainer.
Here is the absolute core law of limits. The ceiling that keeps a person poor is the exact same ceiling that keeps a system, an organization, or even a whole nation poor. It's belief and behavior before resources, always. We constantly trick ourselves into thinking, man, if I just had more money, or if we just had more factory equipment, a higher GDP, all our problems would just vanish, right? Well, wrong. The data is super clear on this. Throwing resources at a broken system doesn't fix it. It literally just amplifies the breakage. To fix the output, we actually have to look at the underlying code.
To really picture this, author T. Harv Eker uses this brilliant analogy of a tree. Think about your financial results, your income, your bank account. Those are the visible fruits on the tree. But what actually creates the fruit? It's the seeds and the roots underground, right? So if you want to change the visible, you absolutely must change the invisible first. I mean, if you don't like the apples growing on your tree, you can't just tape new apples to the branches. You gotta change the roots. Your bank account is basically just a physical manifestation of your psychological conditioning.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, hey, I know how to save money, I know the mechanics. But as the brilliant financial writer Morgan Housel points out, knowing what to do tells you absolutely nothing about what happens in your head when you actually try to execute it. Think about it. The healthcare industry solved huge problems by applying modern science to the physical body. But the money industry, totally different ballgame. Personal finance and wealth building, they aren't just math problems. They are psychological battlegrounds. There is this massive, massive gap between logical knowledge and psychological execution.
So the absolutely crucial question is, what exactly fills that gap? Eker calls it your financial blueprint. It's basically like the architectural blueprint for a house, but for your money. It's a preset program, a deeply embedded way of relating to wealth that was formed mostly by what you heard, saw, and experienced when you were just a little kid. And here's the scary part. If your subconscious blueprint is set for struggle, no matter amount of business knowledge, no fancy investment strategy, not even a sudden windfall of cash is going to save you. You will subconsciously sabotage yourself just to get back to the financial temperature your blueprint is comfortable with. It acts as an absolute, uncompromising internal ceiling. And the exact mechanism of how this blueprint dictates your reality, it's called the process of manifestation. It's a simple formula. T leads to F, which leads to A, which equals R. Thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions, and actions lead to results. Your programming dictates your thoughts, right? So let's say you were verbally conditioned growing up to believe that money is the root of all evil. Well, that thought triggers a feeling of anxiety or maybe guilt whenever wealth is involved. And that feeling, it drives an action, like picking a bad stock on purpose or just totally mismanaging your savings, which of course produces a poor financial result. The root creates the fruit.
Okay, so this brings us to a really fascinating pivot. What happens when we take this whole concept, this idea of an invisible blueprint dictating physical reality, and we scale it up, like from a single person's mind to a massive organizational structure, or even the entire economic engine of a nation? Does that same rule still apply?
Well, the answer is a massive, resounding yes. And this brings us to Eliyahu Goldratt's incredibly groundbreaking framework, the theory of constraints. Goldratt basically figured out that any system's throughput, meaning its ability to achieve a goal, like making a profit, is limited by a single bottleneck, just one. It literally doesn't matter how many total resources a factory, a business, or country has. Its ultimate absolute capacity is dictated solely by its narrowest point, just like your personal wealth is limited by your narrowest limiting belief.
So how do we actually spot this in the real world? Well, as business leader John McNeil points out when he applies Goldratt's work, the telltale sign of a constraint is a massive pileup of inventory at one stage or another. If you're on a factory floor and one machine is just a bit slower than the rest, you are literally going to see a physical mountain of parts piled up right in front of it. And it's the exact same dynamic as an unhelpful belief stalling a person's progress. All that energy, the work, the resources, it just piles up against an invisible wall, totally unable to flow through to the result we actually want. So how in the world do we fix this? Goldratt outlined what he called the 5 focusing steps. Number 1, identify the bottleneck. 2, exploit it, meaning make absolutely sure it is never, ever idle. 3, subordinate everything else to that bottleneck. 4, elevate it, like bring in more capacity specifically for that constraint. And 5, repeat the whole process. But here is the kicker, and you've got to remember this. Maximizing a non-bottleneck is, as Goldratt's characters discover, an act of maximum stupidity. Literally. If you optimize a machine that isn't the constraint, you aren't actually increasing productivity at all. You're just creating a bigger pile of excess inventory. You're wasting precious resources on the wrong problem. But here is where the psychology of the individual perfectly mirrors the pathology of a whole organization. Why do these bottlenecks stick around for so long? It's because of the organizational trap. You see, in large groups, things that start out as simply good ideas slowly solidify into conventions. Then, those customs start being perceived as hard rules, and finally, those rules are treated as absolute, unbreakable requirements. Suddenly, innovation and growth are completely boxed in by these phantom walls, and they aren't laws of physics. They're just deeply embedded institutional beliefs, whether you're in a corporate boardroom or a nation's government. Let me give you a perfect example. When John McNeil was working with Elon Musk to build a Tesla factory in China, they ran into a massive wall-sized constraint. The Chinese government demanded equity participation in foreign-owned plants. General Motors, Microsoft, Volkswagen, literally everybody had always accepted this as an absolute requirement. But step 1 of Musk's algorithm was to question every requirement. He completely refused to accept this conventional rule and actually negotiated a 100% Tesla-owned plant. By investigating and challenging that requirement, they proved it wasn't a law of physics at all. It was just a custom. They changed the blueprint and boom, they changed the reality. Which leads us to a pretty profound realization when we're analyzing systems. We love to blame physical constraints, don't we? We point fingers at the machines, the limited floor space, the lack of a budget, or a nation's lack of natural resources. But the real culprits? They are almost always policy constraints. On a national level, that looks like outdated economic doctrines. In a business, it's the standard operating procedures and the deeply ingrained behavioral patterns of the management team. Even in giant legacy organizations like General Motors, executives eventually had to admit that the ultimate bottlenecks weren't their multi-million-dollar robots. The bottlenecks were their own management policies and human behavior. It's exactly like the protagonist in Goldratt's book, The Goal, finally realizes the real constraints, even in our plant, were not the machines, they were the policies. Corporate policies, national economic doctrines, standard operating procedures. At the end of the day, they are nothing more than the macro equivalent of an individual's subconscious financial blueprint. They are just invisible rules that dictate visible physical limits. So we come right back around to exactly where we started, because the symmetry here is just undeniable. The ceiling that keeps a single person poor is the exact same ceiling that keeps an organization poor. And it's the exact same ceiling that stalls the economic statecraft of an entire nation. It is always belief and behavior before resources. Think about it. If a nation has toxic economic policies, dumping foreign aid into it won't magically create wealth. It will literally just pile up inventory at the bottleneck of corruption or inefficiency. And if a person has a blueprint set for scarcity, winning the lottery will just result in them losing it all to match their internal thermostat. The bottom line, you cannot out-resource a broken blueprint. Never gonna happen. Whether you're managing your own personal bank account, leading a Fortune 500 company, or analyzing the wealth of nations, this fundamental law of constraints applies across the board. If you want to change the fruits, you absolutely must change the roots. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to take a hard look at your own life or your own business. Where's the inventory piling up for you? And more importantly, what is the invisible, unquestioned policy or belief that is acting as your ultimate bottleneck right now? Find it, question it, and break the ceiling.